Yeah, we don't change our process necessarily unless we think the process isn't getting the consistent outcomes that we want. But over time, your results are just the sum total of all the process and action that you deliver. And the reality, I mean, the only change in terms of focus areas, in terms of what we looked at, I mean, there's a lot of tactical stuff that we didn't get right, and that is, in essence, pretty easy to identify, and it's pretty simple, but it's not easy to execute consistently over time, particularly for us yet, because we're not delivering over 125 minutes of a game, the right execution in every situation. But no one ever really does. I mean, that's the game's, footy's not a game of perfect. The bit that's different for us is that we can't escape the reality, and we are not trying to escape the reality that when the pressure test has come this year, and usually that's early in the season, there's pressure, there's always pressure, but it's at the pointy end of the season when you put yourself in contention, to compete and to qualify. When that pressure's come, we failed the test, and when we've played games that we should win, could win, need to win, we've failed that weight of expectation, and most of that expectation is internal expectation, the players' expectations. And so the game on the weekend looked to me like we had players, probably as a club even, we were went in with an attitude of, gee, I hope we win this, or even worse, I hope we don't lose this. And that's not. And I tried to guard against that really strongly, and we failed the test. So how do you improve that? How do you fix that? Well, you keep putting yourself in those pressure situations, and we could just develop our game and sit in the bottom half of the ladder and say we're building a list and we're building a style, or we can try and perform and compete against the best and keep putting ourselves in those situations. And until we are a team that can handle those situations, whether people want to talk about finals, not finals, all that stuff, it becomes an irrelevance, because unless you're playing a style that is good enough to compete against the best in the pressure moments, when it really matters, whether you make finals, don't make finals, it doesn't matter. We want to be playing a style that can compete against the best in the pressure moments, and perform well, not just make it. I was most disappointed that, because I think it's really important to delineate between, I thought there was a lack of effort and intent, and in review I still thought that. But don't confuse that with a lack of care. Like our players, they want to win more than just about every group that I've seen, and for a variety of reasons, and everyone knows our club history, they are desperate, but we played, desperate, hopeful football, and we need to refocus on the really simple fundamentals, and we do have tactical things to sort through, but I mean the fundamental of our game is effort and intent, and the effort and intent looked poor on the weekend, but not through lack of care. It was through getting distracted from the situation and not playing each contest, playing each moment. So now, while it's bitterly disappointing, it was a failure of the pressure test, and unfortunately, the pressure tests will keep coming. We're not Olympians. We don't get one pressure test every 4 years. We get to go again. Well, I mean, I think they're pleased that it's been acknowledged, because they feel it, and they know it. Whether they'll consciously admit that or not. And the only way for us to move forward is just to be upfront and look. We were tested, we failed. But how do you improve? Well, you get tested, you fail, you improve. You get tested again, you fail, you improve, until you break through. And we haven't broken through. I think I've been very consistent about that over the last 18 months. I've never sat here and said that no, everything's going beautifully. And the reality of our comp is that if you're winning, everyone's happy. And no team this year has just been winning every game over a long period of time. So it's the opportunity for us is, and for everyone else is, that the competition's tighter than it's ever been. That presents its own challenges, but it also presents huge opportunity too, because like a lot of teams have shown this year, you can feel like you're a mile off it, and then a month later you can feel like you're right in it.
Where do you feel you are?
I'm not worried about judging us against everyone else at the moment. I'm worried about judging us against our own internal expectations of effort and intent, and that's not at the mark consistently yet. But we have shown over time that our best is reasonably capable. It's just not consistent enough over time yet.
Yeah, just back on the point you made before about playing not to lose and dealing with that pressure. How do you have to rely on the individual player to go out there and try and play not to lose? Like, how do you manage that situation and dealing with that stress?
It's a great question, and it's a question across all world sport. Like how do you deal with the moment? How do you deal with pressure? And it's really apt that the Olympics are on right now. I mean, imagine the pressure Kathy Freeman felt. The 2000 Olympics, weight of a nation. I mean, how does she deal with that moment? How does she deal with that pressure? And we do an incredible amount of work in that space, and we need to continue to work on that. But that's what all elite athletes have to deal with. If it didn't matter and if it didn't mean anything, you probably wouldn't do it. So it's getting players into the frame of mind that, yep, the pressure's there, we all want to win, but where does your focus need to be? And it can't be on hoping for something to happen. It's got to be on your action to deliver, when it matters. And that's where we've faltered over the last couple of weeks, and we've got to continue to invest in that space and continue to work on it. Yeah, well, anyone who's been through long-term injuries, it's a long-term rehab's a long and lonely place. It tests you mentally, it tests you physically, and players who come through that, usually come out better. I mean, Dylan's he's an absolute pro, and he leads by example with the way he prepares to play his footy. So he's come back well, and we've got a number of players who, like every club, a number of players who are in that situation. So I think everyone's pleased for guys who come through long-term rehab.
There's a bit of chat that the Saints are sniffing around. Are you confident that he stays at Essendon and finishes his career here, or do you discuss that with him at all?
No, I don't spend any time in that space. I mean, my job is to provide the best environment and vision for the club, and we understand the sort of the world we live in now, whether it's free agency or trading or players moving clubs. And like I was asked probably on a weekly basis about Parrish and Redmond last year. I mean, it's my job's to create the environment, and players make their decision. I'm not trying to hold anyone over a barrel.